It's great that you were able to record that and use it as a self-evaluation. But, there's going to be a large percentage of people who learn about the practice who aren't going to do that, who are still going to be curious to want to try and improve their use of it. How can someone who wants to do it but doesn't want to record every conversation, what kind of mechanisms for improvement can they employ or use to help them get better?
Well, what I would recommend is immediately after you have a talk with somebody, if you have the option, because sometimes just as one talk's wrapping up, somebody else might be coming up or curious about what you're doing, and then you might forget. But if you can, jot down some notes. Try to record what you think went well in that conversation and what didn't go so well. You might even want to ask your conversation partner before they walk away, hey, if you don't mind, would you give me a little bit of feedback as far as what you thought about that talk? And you're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm here to grow. I realize that I probably didn't do some things that were as productive that I thought that they were. Would you be interested in giving me a little constructive criticism? So you can always do that. Sometimes that's not an option because they're long gone. It might even be your Uber driver, right? So you got dropped off at your destination and now you're wondering if that was good or not. But you can still do a little self-assessment. You might even want to talk about the conversation that you had with others who are interested in SE, where they may ask you questions about the talk that you never even considered. Like, what was the environment like? Was it noisy there at the time, or did they seem rushed? How many other people were walking around? So sometimes just bouncing your conversation off of somebody else can be helpful in growing.
Yeah, I could see for me personally, just to give context to this statement, times that I've used it most have been with friends and people I'm familiar with already, where we get into some hot button issue and maybe have a disagreement. And I could see the asking for feedback being a useful mechanism in those types of circumstances where, especially if it's someone who maybe you've had an unsuccessful conversation with before and you employ this method, and now after you're done talking, hey, I know we had a hard time the first time, but that felt like it went better to me. Did it not to you? Like, what did you like better about that conversation? It could be a useful way to go about it.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, try to do that as much as you possibly can. And hopefully they're being straight with you and they're being upfront and giving you good feedback and not just catering to your ego. So you have to be careful though, I think, with SE, because when you find a conversation partner who's open and they're seriously thinking about your questions, you may have experienced this yourself, but it's a really fun feeling. It's exciting to watch somebody think when you've asked them a really good question.
And you feel like you're connecting. Yeah, the connection feels much deeper.
It does. It's a sincere connection. However, it could incentivize you to keep asking questions beyond their level of comfort to the point where you might seem like you're pushing an agenda, or you're not so much interested in what their beliefs are as you are in getting them to a destination of some sort that they're not ready to go to, or they're not even willing to entertain. So also try not to come across as condescending. I think there's a fine line there as well. And it's probably useful to get some feedback. Like, you can ask, at any point, did you feel like I was talking down to you or not listening to you, or that type of thing? Sometimes some of the feedback I get, it's not usually, I don't think I've ever received feedbacks on Twitter maybe, but in a personal face-to-face or video conversation, I don't think I've ever had somebody say, I got the sense that you were being condescending to me, that I was lower than you in this exchange. I do get that kind of feedback from people who watch the exchanges. People often who share the same position as the person that I'm interrogating kindly with my questions. I think that they think that I'm being condescending, but the person that I'm speaking with doesn't get that impression. I certainly don't want to give that impression, but try to keep that in the back of your mind too, is how will this be perceived by this person that I'm speaking with? and others who might be watching or listening to this conversation. Remind yourself, maybe, even if you're not, pretend that you're on a stage and people are watching your interaction. That, I think, helps kind of keep things on track and civil.